If you own an insurance agency and you're still doing these tasks manually, you're leaving serious money on the table. In this video, I'm going to show you how to automate the 5 most time-consuming tasks in your insurance agency with AI, step by step, no coding required. These are the exact systems we have built for agencies, so pay close attention. And if you're new to the channel, my name is Azim. I built tons of systems to automate hundreds of tasks, as well as recover and generate hundreds of thousands of dollars for businesses, most recently insurance agencies. So this is the definitive, boring but effective guide to automating your insurance agency in 2026. And looking at the diagram, this is probably not going to be the most exciting thing you want to see in your life, but it is going to be one of the most effective strategies that you need to actually future-proof your agency. Because what I'm about to say is that AI can already automate a lot of the tasks you think it can. So it's better that we get the advantage of adopting it instead of continuing to run our businesses the same way and see how it starts to negatively affect us. So as I said, this is a boring but effective guide. And over here, I've distilled 5 of the main categories of use cases that we automate in insurance agencies, including lead intake, follow-up, quoting, renewals, as well as client support. For each of these, I'm going to provide an example, explain how something happens, and give you the ideas behind how these systems work. After that, I'm going to break down the tech stack that we actually use to fulfill this. So if you're technical or you have somebody technical on your team, you're not just stuck with the information I gave you, but you can actually have somewhat of a better idea on how to do this and hopefully start automating some parts of your business today. So let's start off with lead intake, probably one of the most important processes in any business. This is that the way AI has recently transformed is qualification. So let's say you're an agency and you run ads, you have a landing page, and you also have a website with a form. Regardless of whether a lead will submit their information through that website, through an ad, or through the landing page, you can set up trigger workflows that within just a few seconds of that form submission happening, you have an AI agent going ahead and qualifying the lead, and it can be equipped with total context about your agency, who your ICP is, who you consider qualified and disqualified, and it's not only able to determine who's qualified and who's not, but it can actually route to separate agents that can adjust your CRM, then place around 2 calls and perform a warm handoff. And ultimately, the reason why this is simpler is because it's more consolidated. So you're not scrambling between platforms like Facebook and then Google, and then also wherever your form submissions are stored, and then also manually calling them. But instead what happens is that all of these platforms are pretty much combined into one chunk, but the AI still knows where the lead is coming from, and it's smart enough to score these people, tag them inside of a CRM, and perform any CRM related task. And besides that, it's even able to call those people. So let's say they gave you their phone number, they can call them and actually get a lot of the work done for you, because the last thing you want to be doing is manually calling all of these people, when instead you can have an agent call them and just receive the warm handoff calls. If I haven't mentioned this yet, all of these systems are fully compliant. The tech we use is based on security, SOC 2 compliance, GDPR compliance, HIPAA compliance, you name it. And the reason I'm so confident about this is because we've actually implemented these use cases. So we've went deep into the development of each of these, and we know how each of these goes. And now moving on from lead intake to follow-up, which are siblings or at the very least cousins in terms of how related they are, we're going to have a very similar pattern of the AI being able to analyze your existing information as well as follow up with people. And the key thing that we're not doing throughout these 2 processes is actually automating the sales portion of this. If you've noticed, the lead intake part of this is strictly for qualification and handing off calls to the human so that they can close them. Because as useful or as fast as AI agents can be, they're never going to replace human-led sales. Let's say we're following up over email. In the case that a lead goes cold, you can actually set up sequences to fire off every day. And what these can do is check through your records and see which leads are due for follow-ups today. And after it gets that list of people, it can perform things such as write emails according to your tone. Typically, what we have these do is draft the emails and then notify staff, because this is still client-facing and sales-oriented activity, so we don't want to be automating the entirety of it. And in addition to this, after team approval, you can have an auto sequence fire off. This is more of the automation angle that's already been around for many years, but yet another important thing that we just have to say no to when we speak with a lot of agencies is putting AI into every single component. Because even though AI can be very smart, it's not always going to be consistent in the exact same way. If you can have an automation do it, you should have an automation do it. And in turn, when replies are detected, you can have more trigger workflows that can alert your staff, alert yourself, just so you're really maxing out on the speed to lead. Because it's great that if you're doing all of this follow-up, but if the notification of the lead's reply doesn't reach you, you didn't get quite as much value out of the follow-up as you could have. The next portion of this is going to be quoting. And this really varies by agency. Some of them don't need it because already a good portion of it is automated. So this may not be as relevant to every agency as some of the other use cases might be, but this is definitely an honorable mention, so I'm still going to cover it. Now, quoting is often unique based on every single person. There are a lot of details that go into it, and there's quite a bit of logic, but this can still be automated to a large extent. So if a prospect passes down information about themselves through a form or a call, you can actually take note all of this information, once again using automation. Their details can be captured through a form or auto-transcribed from a call. That's actually what many voice agents do, and you can also add silent voice agents to calls, meaning that they essentially function as note takers. So if you have the prospect here and you have the human here, the middle layer here is going to be the silent AI note taker, which is going to be transcribing all of the information. And so after that call ends or after that form is submitted, an AI can gather that info and generate a quote. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to generate a complete quote. It can even be helpful when it goes ahead and creates a list of suggestions or a summary, because the idea here is mainly based on speed and energy. If you already have the information from the form or you transcribed it from a call, you don't really want to waste the time or the energy going back, finding that information, and generating the quote. Now, whether the quote is generated or whether suggestions are provided, the agent still gets the last step. They're going to finish creating it and then approve or send it out themselves. The fourth category of use cases are going to be renewals. And of course, renewals are absolutely important in insurance. You don't want to mess up the date on which policies renew. Another thing that automation can provide are going to be renewal reminders. So whether you're tracking something in a spreadsheet or maybe your CRM, you can have automations do various things. You can get reminders in many different ways. One thing is automating it with a calendar. So for example, if a policy is expiring and it's due in 90 days, and today is January 1st, what the automation can do is create a calendar reminder for 90 days from that date. So I believe that would be something like April 1st. And also on the day of April 1st, or maybe a day prior, the AI can send a notice to an email plus an SMS to both the agent and the lead handle objections, which is something that we've leaned into before but wouldn't recommend for most use cases. And what this helps do is recover otherwise lost revenue. Just because people didn't know that a renewal date was approaching and because the client wasn't informed of it earlier in time, they're often lost or just leads to time that is unnecessarily wasted. But I hope you get the point here. When the policy is renewed, the CRM is updated, and this happens again. Policy is soon to expire, AI sends notice, and the cycle essentially repeats itself. And the last portion of this is going to be client support. Client support is often categorized in different tiers. So something like tier 1 can mean very basic questions, and then tier 3 might require human escalation. In one of my previous videos, we built an FAQ and support agent for one of our clients. And this AI voice agent answers 24/7. It can handle up to 50 calls at once. For something like tier 1 issues, you can connect a knowledge base to it. For tier 2 issues, you can add in some more complex logic and maybe even some automations that it can activate. And then for tier 3, it can escalate them if they're too complex. We don't just want the agents to be doing this without us knowing how it goes or what happens, because if the data is not there, we're pretty much blind. And after the issue is resolved, it can be tracked either in something like support history or stored as a transcript. And so that sums up the main 5 categories of use cases that can be automated. Now we're going to move on to the technical walkthrough, but before we do that, if you are an agency or a business owner and you'd like to see more about how this can be implemented for your own company, feel free to book a one-on-one consultation with us using the first link in the description. It's a simple 30 minutes of us chatting and helping you navigate your way around AI. And I only open up 3 spots per video, so if that sounds like you, feel free to grab any time now. And so now we're going to wrap up with the tech stack explanation of all of this. Of course, it's great to know that there are 5 different categories of use cases and that AI agents work in some parts, automations work in other parts, and CRMs work elsewhere. But it's better to know what you're actually working with and what powers this behind the scenes. So I'll give you a high-level technical breakdown of each of the tools that we use for agencies, explaining their function, just so you can get an idea of how this works exactly. The first section of this will be a workflow automation. This is really that kind of automation that has little to no AI in it. So as I said before, this is something like creating a calendar reminder 90 days from a certain date. This is where you would use NAN because you don't need an AI agent to tell you what date it's going to be in 90 days. That can be done with simple logic. Moving on, we're going to have Claude, and I'll actually adjust this to say Claude Code. And so what Claude, and specifically Claude Code, do is they can function as your AI executive assistant. Now, I didn't exactly mention this in these 5 cases, but Claude can actually function as sort of your executive assistant. Claude Code is actually an AI executive assistant that can interact with you to perform certain tasks. I actually made a separate video on this breaking it down, which you can check it out somewhere over here. I'll link it above. But just know that there can be 2 types of AI and automation. One are going to be independent automations, which can pretty much run by themselves for the most part. And the second part are going to be AI agents. Now, these are also independent in the sense that they can carry out things for you, but they actually receive instructions from you. And certain use cases where these can be helpful include things like setting up email campaigns, which I'll get to in just a second, retrieving information, creating presentations and documents, and so on. So just know that Claude Code is basically like having a personal assistant, except it does everything digitally. Yeah, it's still really powerful. As I said, if you want to check out the video that I made about it, it's going to be over here. So whereas maybe 5 of these different use cases are mainly based on workflows that you don't interact with, it's going to be over here. Moving on to CRMs and AMSs, oftentimes what we see many agencies using are going to be platforms like HubSpot and Go High Level especially, which are both big CRMs. They're both really flexible with automation, and they even have a lot of built-in automation. But where these 3 different example platforms would really come in, as I said, would be the follow-up stages, the renewal stages, as well as the lead intake. After that, we're going to have the Voice AI section. 2 of my favorite platforms to use for this are going to be Vappy and 11 Labs. As we explored, they're involved in both lead intake because they can call leads and also client support, whether it be over the phone or on something like a website. And finally, we're going to have lead generation. And these are some of our preferred tools because they're really behind what builds the lead generation foundation for many agencies. If you haven't yet seen my video on building a $1.1 million outreach system for insurance agencies, you can check that out. I'm not going to get into the very specific details of each platform, but just know that referral partner generation, so for example, if you're offering life insurance and you want referral partners, you would go ahead and email people like financial advisors, and you need certain tools like Vane to prospect and get the details of certain people, and Email Finder to enrich the details of these people. So you can actually make sure you're sending emails to legitimate people instantly, where you can set up email campaigns, set up mailboxes, have a separate CRM, and reply to anyone who responds to you. But now that we've covered the last pillar of the tech stack, that being lead gen, this is really the end of the breakdown of how you can automate your insurance agency in 2026. I hope this wasn't too boring, but my main goal here is not to make this seem fun and really amazing and attractive, but it's to give you an effective, straightforward, and no BS guide on how to automate your insurance agency. And of course, if you want some more one-on-one and tailored guidance, feel free to book a chat with me using the first link in the description. I also have this entire diagram inside of my resources hub, so that's going to be the second link in the description. And besides this diagram, you can also get access to everything else that I've walked through in my past videos for completely free. That's also going to be in the resource hub, and there's an undeniable amount of value in here. So I hope you found it useful. And with that, I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Keep crushing it with insurance, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.